First of all, thanks, Rob, for joining me.
Of course. Thanks for having me and my house.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to hear from you about your campaign, why you're running, and talk about some of the issues. So we can get right into it. I guess, what inspired you to run for city council at large?
Well, you've known me for a while, so you kind of have a decent idea of why I decided to run. But for the listeners, public service is a real passion of mine. I think that it's one of the things in life that really gives meaning to what we do, is to serve others. Whether that's your spouse, kids, your family members, your friends, service to others is one of, if not the greatest thing you can do and give to this world. And that sounds kind of arrogant when you put it that way, but I really do feel that if you don't, model your life around public service, that you're doing yourself a disservice. Because you find a lot of joy and fulfillment out of doing things for other people. And so that's not the reason I ran, but that's kind of the guiding principles that I was taught growing up, and that I try to model my life around. And I don't always do great at it, but so the reasons that I ran, though, was because I've lived in Wyoming for 9 years now. And I went to school at Grace Christian University, same as you. And, we just being in this community for that long has shown me, a lot of the real positives of the city, but also some of the real, I would say, downsides, or even things that could be improved. And those things have stayed problems for years, and they don't seem to really get any better.
Yeah.
And I know we can do better. I know Wyoming itself has a lot of potential. We are the biggest city in West Michigan behind Grand Rapids.
That's true.
Yep. Nobody ever thinks about that, but we are. And we don't get a lot of attention, though.
No.
And I think a lot of people don't really think about us or disregard the city for whatever reason, but I think that's a grave disservice. And I think we really do have a lot of potential to change and to move our city forward in a lot of ways. But I'm running to kind of address those issues.
Yeah, let's get into that. Let's talk about some of the issues here in Wyoming. What are the major issues facing the city, and how do you plan to address the issues?
Firstly, Wyoming has a lot of positives. We have excellent parks. I think we have 21 parks and somewhere near 700 acres of parkland. That's awesome. We've got 76,000 people in our city. So it's about what you would want to have, but they're really well-maintained parks. We've got excellent people. People that live in Wyoming are just really kind, outgoing, and they'll help you with whatever you need if you ask. And I also am really impressed with our city staff. I think for what we're able to pay our city staff, and for how mid-size of a city we are, we have really top-notch professionals that work there. But some of the things that I've noticed over the years that I would like to improve upon in the city, I guess you could say, there's a few things. One is addressing a lack of identity in the city.
Okay.
Maybe with that, a lack of civic engagement or voter apathy, constituent apathy. I would really like to, unlock this community's potential in a few different ways. I'll get back to that later. But I also think that younger representation on the council is important. And then inspiring civic engagement. That's, as I said, that's huge. And then just a desire to see things change in some meaningful way here would be really nice.
Yeah.
So to go back through those, the first one was civic engagement, voter apathy, and that was kind of one of the ones I mentioned later on too. We have pretty poor voter turnout in Wyoming, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But regardless, I would like to see myself, if I was to be elected, really work on that issue in particular. And I think it'll take a lot of grassroots engagement. I think it's going to take going door to door, talking to people, seeing what they think, just engaging with them where they are. That won't be easy, but I think it's necessary to create a healthier community. When you have voter apathy and people don't really show up to vote and turn out slow, and you don't really get a representative at the very end of things that the entire city wanted, just a small portion.
Gotcha.
Because they're the ones that showed up. And, that's good. I'm glad the people that showed up did show up. That's amazing. But I want to see a lot of people show up. I want to see the majority of registered voters show up. To me, that makes a good community when people are invested in what happens, in their local community. So that's number one. Number two, unlocking the community's potential. Wyoming, you could kind of consider a bedroom community. And what a bedroom community is a residential area where people might live in Wyoming, but they don't work here. So they live here, they sleep here, and then in the morning they go to work in Grand Rapids, Walker, Byron Center, whatever. And when you have bedroom communities, they tend to have less of an identity and less engagement from its community, just less pride in the community, that sort of thing. And they're also a little bit quieter, more residential. There are fewer local jobs and businesses and stuff like that. That's a real shame. I think that we're classified as that right now, and it's going to take a lot of work to turn that around, and it won't be easy. But I would like to see a Wyoming that has a very intentional identity that people are proud of. I think that's something that's worth aiming for, because when you have pride in your community, it's a lot easier to maintain it, right? So, I think if, let's just say, for example, somebody saw a ton of trash on the road in a city that has a high value on identity, people love living there, they talk about how they live there, they're more likely to go and just take care of that issue because they feel that way about their city, right? And so that's the kind of feelings that I want to instill in Wyoming residents, and just give them a city that they can be proud of, that everybody can be proud of here. Okay. And then the other issue is younger representation on the council. I think something like 59% of Wyoming residents are under the age of 40.
Wow.
Yeah, you never think that.
No.
But a lot of young families live in Wyoming, have called this their home. And there's only one member of the city council that's under 40. So I think to have a more representative government, you have to have people that more are closer in age, and their interests might align better with the city's demographics. So I think that's important too. And then just the desire for change. I think after so many years of seeing the city stay the same in a lot of ways, get better in some ways, certainly, but stay the same in other ways, has been kind of discouraging. And so when the opportunity came to run, it was kind of a no-brainer, because it's easy to talk about issues. It's harder to actually act upon them and do something about it. And kind of like a put up or show up. Like, yeah, I wouldn't feel right about if I kept complaining unless I was actually doing something to try to change it. So yeah, so that's kind of why. That's a big, broad reason for why I would say I'm running. And then there's a lot more specific reasons underneath that are easier to quantify, I suppose.
Do you want to dive in more detail what the issues are in Wyoming and how you plan to address those issues?
Sure. So to me, there are 3 issues that I guess I'll kind of hone in on. The big one, I think, is city beautification and restoration. And when I say that, what I mean is I think we can do a lot of work on the infrastructure that we have in this city to make it more appealing. One of Wyoming's one of the negatives, I guess you could say, is that we have some pretty big abandoned buildings that are just there. They're empty, maybe not abandoned, but they're not currently being used for much. And that's the result of a lot of things. I mean, the 2008 recession really hit Wyoming hard, and the GM plant that was here, it hit that hard. So it's long-term problems that we're just now getting back into a position that we can actually do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would really like to see us in the city government make a concerted effort to really beautify the city. I'm talking flowers in the medians. I'm talking planting more trees everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Public art, murals, stuff to give it an identity and to make people like being here. When you drive through Wyoming via 28th Street,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, you don't have a lot to look at. You have some businesses, you have some restaurants, some chain restaurants, some that are locally owned. You have some empty buildings, more than I would like. And it's just, as you're driving through, it's not a place that's you're probably gonna if you're not from Wyoming, you're probably not thinking, oh yeah, this is, I can't wait to live on 28th Street.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to come here and to really appreciate their time here.
Yeah.
I want them to leave thinking, wow, that's a cool city. It's not like it's out of reach for us.
Mm-hmm.
Through some very intentional infrastructure changes, just maintaining our current infrastructure, improving upon it, building new infrastructure, that'll go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of theories about how a place's appearance affects people's opinions about it, just like anything else. And there's a lot of studies that have shown that the more you can make a place beautiful and enjoyable to live in, the more likely people are to want to live there and to want to keep it nice,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Sure.
And so that's almost like a deeper level for humans. Is we need to own this place and just make it better. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Definitely, yeah.
But that's a big priority of mine. I want everybody that lives here to really be happy and proud to live here. And most people are, I would say, but there's a lot of people that don't feel that way, and I understand where they're coming from. So that's a big one. I would like to see a lot more economic development and job creation here. As I said earlier about bedroom communities, they're more known for just being a residential place with less jobs and less businesses. And I want people to work here and live here and love both of those things. Mm-hmm. And I want businesses to enjoy being here. I want locally owned businesses to be here. I want them to succeed. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Of course, on city council, I won't be able to just wave a magic wand and be like, oh, we have a new business here. That's not how it works. But you can make some pretty intentional efforts to convince investors and business owners that this is a good place for their business. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that has to do with city leadership and the ability to convince these guys that they should do their businesses here. So I'd like to take a really active part in that, extremely active, lobbying people and always just trying to be Wyoming's biggest cheerleader,
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And then I would say another big one for me is the housing shortage. Mm-hmm. West Michigan in general, West Michigan in particular, and then the state of Michigan in general is facing a housing shortage. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to get into the specifics. We would be here for a long time. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is we need more housing in Wyoming and the greater Grand Rapids area because there's just more demand than there is supply. And city council can have a hand in that, up with zoning laws and stuff like that. But you want to make sure that you do it in a thoughtful way. I don't just want to throw up apartment buildings just because we can, or, I wouldn't be the one throwing it up, but I don't want to approve a permit just because we can. You have to make sure that you really integrate the new housing developments with the current city infrastructure, and to make sure that residents' thoughts and feelings about it are heard. That's really important to me. But I think we have to do something. I think we have to be proactive in that way. And I think there's a middle ground there where almost everybody can be happy and we can just improve our housing options around here. It's expensive to live in Wyoming, to live in Grand Rapids. And that's a nationwide problem right now. It's not like it's unique to us. But it's still something that we need to work to change because it's not going to get better unless you do something.
It's true.
Our population is growing. Michigan, not by a ton, but I foresee that it will continue to grow, and as time goes on, just due to our location near the Great Lakes and around the Great Lakes Basin, I think Michigan in particular is going to be a state people move to. I think in 20, 30 years, long term. So we need to be prepared for that. We can't just be reactive and sit on our hands, and when it finally becomes a problem, do something about it. I would prefer to be proactive. That way you're able to make more intentional decisions, better thought out decisions because you have more time to think about them. City planning really is an art. And there's really good ways to do it and really poor ways to do it. And I just want to make sure that we put a lot of thought into that. And basically, you could sum up all the things that I want to do as me looking at the city of Wyoming from a very long-term perspective. We're both in our 20s, or late 20s now, but we've, if everything goes well for us, we've got a lot of life left to live. And to me, you will spend a life well if you are just dedicating it to your community, trying to make it better. So in 40 years, when I still live in Wyoming, I really hope I can look back and say that I made a difference. And whether that's through city council or any other means, that's, even if I was to lose, this is still a passion of mine, and I still really love this city. So those are some of my most pressing issues. I have several more that are also important to me. But that's kind of what spurred me, I guess, to run this second time.
Okay. The next question is, how do you plan to involve the community in the decision-making processes? And how do you plan to bridge any gaps between the city council and the residents?
Great question. Like I said before, that's probably the area of Wyoming that I would like to work on the most. It's just civic engagement. And so I would say most residents of Wyoming don't know who their city council members are. And they probably don't really care, because a lot of people have the opinion that it doesn't really affect them too much, but I think it does. And so actively, I would just try to reach people in whatever method possible. I think going door to door is helpful. I think holding regular town halls separate from city council meetings is helpful, whether those be actual town hall meetings or more of a community forum where I set up office hours and people can come have a donut with me, somewhere in the city at different restaurants. There's a lot of value in that, just making yourself accessible. And I would really like to just talk to anybody, just get them involved, get them up to speed on what we're doing here, so that it doesn't come out 7 or 8 months after a decision was made on Facebook and people are mad about it. It's like, I want them to know right away. I don't blame them for being upset about it. The city does a good job of making their decisions known, but I think it could be even better. And so I would try to leverage social media, especially if we have big decisions that are coming up. I would really try to just post about them. And if there are complicated issues, try to distill it down so that even, somebody that doesn't pay attention will have no trouble understanding the ins and outs of the issue. That's what I really want to get at. I want people to know what's going on. I want them to feel like they're bought into it. So to answer your question, yeah, I just want people to buy in. And if my strategies are social media, going door to door, holding community forums with people. And then before we have big decisions, I'd like to see community input. So if we have a big vote coming up on tax increase or decrease or whatever have you, I would like to see what people think about it and make sure they know. So I guess just be a little more proactive in my role, which is a big part of my campaign. Yeah.
So Rob, how do you plan to work with other city council members to achieve common goals, especially when there's differences of opinion?
Well, one of the greatest things about city council is, firstly, it's the most intimate level of politics, I would say, because it's you and the people in your city. Doesn't get much smaller than that, maybe school board. So, and it's nonpartisan. It's a nonpartisan seat. You don't declare, you don't run as a certain party. You run as yourself. Of course, you have your own beliefs, but this is a nonpartisan position. And so that makes it a lot easier because people aren't necessarily in city politics for the same reason that people are in federal politics, right? I'm not going to have somebody fake outrage yelling at me in city council like they would in Congress. That's just not the nature of the city. People that are elected to city council generally want to improve the city. And so the great thing about that is that you can have differences of opinion and just talk about it like adults and figure out a compromise, or you may lose or you may win. And you just take it like a champ. I really hate in politics when it gets divisive and nasty. Because in my mind, we're all Americans. It's important that we uplift our country and we make our country better. And you don't get there by dividing. You get there by working together. And this is the one vehicle that I can think of that's nonpartisan, that's so local that you can actually make a change. Like, there's nothing partisan about maintaining clean water or paving roads or anything else that the city does, making sure that you pay your taxes, your city income, your house tax. That stuff is just administrative stuff. It's just part of life. And because of that, I love this. I love that I would be able to help serve the community without having to get into partisan bickering or something time wasting like that. So if there are differences of opinion, I would just deal with it as an adult, as the council's pretty much always done, and just see where you land. Maybe they'll change my mind. Maybe I'll change theirs. That's the cool part, is that you can take away some of that tribalism that party politics brings and just come together to make our community a better place.
So last question here, Rob. What would you like to share with the Wyoming voters as they consider their choices this November?
I would, if you're watching and you're from Wyoming, thanks for taking the time to sit here and listen to me. But I would say, as you consider your choices, consider what kind of community that you would want. If you're satisfied with the way it is now, then maybe I'm not the candidate for you. But I'm running for city council because I believe deeply in the potential this city has to become even better. And I really, to my core, believe that this city has a lot of potential and we have a lot to offer our residents, but we got to tap into it. And that's my core message. I want to make Wyoming more beautiful. I want to make it more vibrant. And I want to make it a more engaged community where everyone feels proud to live. And, regardless of if I'm elected or not, I'm going to work tirelessly to see that happen. Whether it's as a volunteer or as a city councilman or on the commissions that I'm already on for the city of Wyoming. There's always something you can do. You don't have to be elected to make a difference in your community. That's an important distinction. But I really want to promote community pride. And for the voters out there that are considering their two choices for November, I would say, well, firstly, if you like both of us, then feel free to vote for me, because my opponent is the Ward 1 city council member with 2 years left on his term. So if I was to win, he would still be on city council until his term's up in 2 years. Then he's free to run for his Ward 1 position again. There's no difference between ward positions and at-large positions. There's 3 wards in Wyoming. They're broken up basically by population. And they don't get, at-large members like what I'm running for. Those members don't get a bigger stipend. Their votes don't matter more. There's no difference. Okay. So if you really like both of us, then I would consider you to vote for me, and just just give this sort of change that I'm offering a chance. Because it feels like for too long, the city of Wyoming has been ran by the same people, and not a whole lot's changed. And I personally am not okay with that. I'm not just going to just sit there and be like, that's too bad. So that's why I'm running, is because I feel at the very least, I would like to try something different and see if that moves the needle. And if not, well, then I can at least say I tried. I wouldn't try to sit there and be a seat warmer for 20 years, because that's not what this is about. No, you're not going to get international fame or even national fame or even state fame for being on city council. You have to go in with the right reasons. I think most people do, some don't. And my message is just research your candidates, learn what they stand for, and just vote your conscience. Just voting in general is an absolute privilege. And we're blessed that we can show up and vote in free and fair elections. It's not the case in a lot of other countries around the world, and it is here. And I think we don't appreciate that enough. So that's my answer. You can find out more about me at robkilgo.com, ROBAILGO.com. All my positions are laid out there in pretty good detail. And if you ever have a question for me personally, my email is on my website. I would love to hear from anybody in the city or not. So yeah. Thanks, Justin, for talking to me, and thank you for listening. It's win or lose, it's an absolute pleasure to just be part of this conversation. The fact that I can even run for office, being a 26-year-old with no renown, no money to speak of. The fact that I can still run, that's a blessing we have in America. Yeah. And I really admire and appreciate that. So thank you.